Can I get a motion to return to open session?
So moved.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Yes. Carla? Oh, did we call her back?
Aye.
She's still there.
Renee?
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-7.
So the open session of the August 24th, 2023 governing meeting will now come to order. Laura, will you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Anna,
Here.
Corey,
Here.
Gary,
Here.
Carla? Carla?
Here.
Renee?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Brianna?
Here.
Amy?
Here.
We have quorum.
And Dr. Machek, can you introduce our new administrative staff who are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Thank you. I would like to invite our new administrative colleagues to step forward and lead us in the pledge, just like you're helping lead the students and our colleagues in the district and in our schools. So if we could have Mr. Reardon, Ms. Geiser from elementary, Ms. Marato, Mr. Williamson, and Mr. Teterka from middle school. If we could have Ms. Styson from technology, Ms. Chaharbak, I'm going to get it, Chaharbaksi from the business office, and Ms. Cook from human resources. Come on up. You don't get to stand against the wall. Come on up. Oh, Mr. Slosser, I didn't know you were here. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for making it. So,
Take it away.
take it away. Thank you. Honored to have you as colleagues. Thanks.
So we have an item on our agenda that needs to come off tonight. We're going to save it for next month under board improvements, right? Is that the right place?
Yes.
Where did that go? Oh, number 2, discussion of email preferences. We're going to wait on that discussion till next month because we're missing some documentation. That's all my fault. So we will, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended, removing number 2B2 under board improvements and operations?
So moved.
Any
I'm sorry,
dis-
who made the motion? And who seconded? Thank you.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Corey,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Carla?
Aye.
Renee,
Yes.
Brianna,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. And now it's time for the superintendent report. Dr. Machek.
So we're going to go a bit out of order with all of our families here to be recognized for the Gurney Days parade float. So this year the theme of the parade was the 50th anniversary of Gurney Days. And so actually I was hoping that Elizabeth Sanchez Sapezi, there you are, could just say a little bit about how the float evolved and the work and what we did, and then we'll call everybody who had a hand in it come up and be recognized. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Sure, thank you. So this year the theme changed on us a little bit when it was announced, but we wanted to somehow bring a sense of community with our families and teachers, but also offer flexibility in our float. And so we really wanted to celebrate 50 years, and we thought about why not celebrate the best of rock and roll in the 70s. And so that's where we're like, okay, well, I needed some ideas on the best albums from the 70s, so we came up with a list and then sent it out to see who'd like to participate, and we had really great participation from our families, and I was absolutely blown away from what came back. My wildest dreams didn't imagine the artistic abilities of everyone coming back. It was just phenomenal. So it was great for everybody to be able to do their own piece on their own time and then bring it in, and all of us put together and then walk in the parade and pass out a bunch of great stuff to kids. So it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
May I ask, where are, I know I saw the float outside of primary for the first day of school, so where is all the artwork now?
So tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, I'm going to go over there, and we were able to put it up on the back so we didn't damage anybody's artwork, and we're going to be able to cut it apart, and many of our members want it back to be able to either hang in their offices or wherever they have their group that put together the album.
Very cool. Awesome. So, our president and vice president will recognize our volunteers.
It was great. Great participation.
So very first on the list is Mr. Corey Hilmer.
I didn't do it.
You did, you absolutely.
No, I didn't. I actually couldn't. I apologize.
Your honesty. Poor behavior, right? The Accardo family, are they here? Anybody here? Come on up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So cute. Lavana Garner.
So we did this on behalf of the Parent Mentor Program. So we had a chance to participate on behalf of the Parent Mentor Program, so I was really excited to be able to, and I have to give credit to my daughter who helped so much with our Sister Sledge album cover, but I would love to get, did you get a picture, Brooke? Because you got one, a picture? Oh, okay. Excellent. So I just want to make sure you got a picture. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for letting us be a part of it. Very exciting. Thank you.
The Saber family. The Abbey family. Is there an Abbey here? I don't see an Abbey. Nope. And the Sanchez family. There you go. Thank you, thank you. We have one more. Thanks, everybody. It was a great float. It was a lot of fun.
Anna.
One more? Oh, uh-oh.
And the
Oh. And the Santee family? Can we get everybody to come up and let's do a group shot?
Who are you guys? Your whole family?
Well, I'm going to declare that we won the best handouts because we were giving out these little guitar poppets that were the talk of the parade. Everybody wanted one. So little poppets, the little things where you push the, shaped like guitars. People lost their
Album
minds.
frisbees, they were really
It was
cool.
awesome.
Yes.
Really good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, the next aspect of my report is a connection to the strategic plan. As we did last week with our operations and facilities update from Mr. Fuhrer, this month we have our academics and education strategic plan update, and so to present the 23-24 goals and initiatives to the board and community is Dr. Steve Thomas.
Got a little excited. Yeah, it was like awkwardly weighted here. Wow. I can't match that, but I'll try my best. So I do want to thank you very much for having me. I'm Steve Thomas. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning with Equity. I'm here to talk about some of the progress we've made with the education and academics, strategic plan elements. And just a reminder, a little walk down memory lane. We started out with just those thought exchanges, a way of kind of gathering information from our community. We had 9 different thought exchanges, and from that, we came up with a variety of different themes that we shared with the board. The board then, on a night that was actually in this room, we helped to kind of hone those down into 4 different elements. And actually, there was really 5 elements, but we'll talk about that in just a second. And those 4 elements really were that we wanted to focus on were student support, operations, education, academics, and finance. But one of the other areas, as you saw in here, was equity, and that was a really important piece that we did talk about, and we really wanted to say, do we want that as a separate element or do we want that infused? And our decision was we really wanted that infused. So we came up with really a strategy. Dr. Machek had found this document from another district, actually while he was out in the equity symposium out in DC, and the way a district had used basically kind of a thought process, a decision-making process to help ensure that equity is forefront in the decisions being made in the district. So each of the 4 different groups used this as a way to ensure that equity was present within their goal setting. From there, a group that was led by Elizabeth Sanchez-Pezzi, Dr. Kiefer, and me was the Education and Academics Goals group. We were amazing, just put it plainly. A few board members stopped in for quite a while, so thank you. We came up with 2 specific goals, and I think, again, you can see, if you look for equity, you can find equity in exactly what these 2 goals are. I'll read them to you. I know we're not a fan of reading slides, but I do think they're important, just maybe for those at home that can't see it. But goal 1 is student identity and belonging. Students will exhibit an increased sense of belonging in the classroom through instructional strategies, which are aligned with their individual languages, abilities, heritages, and cultures. And collective efficacy will elevate teachers' shared belief that they have a sense of responsibility for student development, including the ability to teach students from diverse backgrounds or who have different learning needs. Those are the 2 goals that we set up as part of our work. We have a lot of action plans below that, but what I'm going to share with you tonight is just really the 3 different elements that we'll be working on this year. Some of it we've started, some of it we're yet to really work on. But the 3 ones for this year, these are the ones that are in play right now. So I've started with goal 2 because this is the one this goal is a little bit more focused in years FY25 and FY26. But one element that is in FY24 is this piece about studying the skill for teacher. It is a 6-day course that teachers do sign up for. It is a rather intense course. And there is collective efficacy without that. It's really getting down to the core understanding that belief that as teachers we have to believe that every kid can succeed at high levels. And once you have that, then we can help every kid be successful. And that's obviously present within our goal setting. So that course is something we'll continue to offer and we'll continue to support and encourage our staff to. The administrative team, the teaching and learning department has all participated in that course. I think we found that valuable, and we'll be looking at other options. Perhaps they have some administrative team, you can take a shorter version of that. So going back to goal 1, there are 2 things that are in play for this year, and one of those is, I'm going to start with the bottom again, I'm going backwards again, but is the Beyond Diversity training. And that was one thing that we made the shift from having it just being completely optional to being required for all new staff, especially those that interact with students. And this year we had 52 staff members that participated in Beyond Diversity training just this August. A couple of board members. I want to thank you very much for attending. Appreciate that for sure. But we had all new teachers. We had supporting teachers. We had office staff, which was great, and our new administrators, as well as some veteran staff members that had not participated in previous sessions that came and attended. So a great and valuable piece. We infused that into our 2-day new teacher orientation. Previously, our new teacher orientation was 3 days. We eliminated a day, but added in 2 days, so it made 4 days total. So we had to make some changing around. Appreciate Dr. Kiefer rescheduling some things so we could really make sure this was part and everyone participated. So there was no reason that they could not participate. The second piece is this piece about how do we really know who our kids are, and how do we really know how we can help connect and really help kids feel like they belong. I do spend too much time on Instagram, perhaps one before I'm going to bed, which I know you shouldn't watch blue light before you go to bed, but I do. And one of the things that kind of popped in my screen was this piece about what's the opposite of belonging. The opposite of belonging is fitting in, if you think about it. So kind of a shocking thought when it just entered my mind. You're right. It's like adjusting what you believe to fit into a group. And we don't want that. We want people to feel like they belong. It's just being naturally part of them. So we'll have to do some adjustments within our culture and identities. So we'll be creating a culture and identity survey that we'll be serving out to all students, K through 8. We'll also be serving our staff members as well. We're going to ask them to respond to these 4 different sections. How are you as a learner? What about your culture? What's holidays? What's fun for you? What things are important to you and what your interests are? What things are those people are important to you, and then my interests, your interests. We're going to break that down, so if it's 4th or above, we'll certainly do it as staff could, or students could respond directly. But below that, we would be asking families to apply for students. Equity leaders will help us, and I think one of the 2 key pieces to this is that, okay, once we get this information, what are we going to do with it? And our equity leaders will help really develop that plan. How do we help teachers integrate that information into their instruction? As well as we want to make sure that they're sharing, things about them as well. And lastly, we'll need to develop a metric really to help measure how our students, the belonging level of our students. We'll need to figure out a metric and how do we measure that? How do we measure how students feel like they belong in Woodland schools? So I have just the next couple of slides are just some examples of the questions just to give you kind of a flavor of what they are. I think there's some really interesting questions up there. You would not need to answer all of these. It would be the ones that just either resonate with you as a family or as a student. If you want to answer them all, by all means, go ahead. But even if there's a couple from each section that really resonate with you, we hope really to gain some information on our students and really, again, help them feel like, hey, this is important. You asked me about this. I shared something about me with you. I hope we can really see that in the classroom and see that in our schools. So those are the 2 for me as a learner and culture questions, and then these are the last 2. Those important to me, and then my interests. So that's a quick summary. We have, these are the questions we've kind of established. We'll look at how to roll it out, some of its logistics, how do we do this, so that we can send the information out and get the information back to people that need it. So we're working on that, and like I said, the last piece of really how do we ensure that really we help teachers then start to infuse that within their instruction. So that's a summary of education and academics up to right now. Any questions I can help with?
Are the questions the same at every grade level?
Yeah, for right now, we talked about having them that way because I feel like as a parent, you can kind of answer for your child at those other ages. Yeah. There's definitely some vocabulary we may need to work down a little bit, like artifacts. What are your family items or artifacts that represent your cultural identity? We may need to work on some of that, but otherwise, we're trying to keep it somewhat same.
Okay, so it's okay. Parents can help their
100%.
Students.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this.
Oh, great.
Just for me as a parent, I sometimes will send, like I did this year, I sent an email about my daughter to her teacher, and I'm like, just so you know, here's some history, this is what you might encounter in the classroom. So to have that available without the parent taking the step and having the district ask for it, and then teachers can can pick and choose which questions they might focus on and highlight. I think that gives teachers choice and letting them have the autonomy to choose how they're going to use the information. I think this is great.
Great. Good. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of resonates maybe more with one section or another. I mean, I'm in teaching and learning, so me as a learner kind of resonates with me. I think there's some great, like those pieces about, how can I help you if you're having a down or a sad day or having a tough day? Like, that's really great to know about kids. Like, we all go through that, right? We all, even our colleagues, maybe they're not having their best day. How do we help support them through that? So I think these are some great things that we really can help each other with as well.
I was excited about this as a concept, but seeing some of the questions, I think it's going to be great. I can't wait to see, the information that we get that we can use as a district. Because if you're asking kids, I love the question about what do you feel like your teacher misunderstands about you as a learner. I think probably we might be surprised at what kids say. So I think I'm excited about this. Your session during the strategic planning to me was just so exciting. I loved being in that session because there was such a will from everybody there to do this work, and what we came out with at the end is so reflective of what was going on in the rooms. I'm excited about this.
That's great. Thanks. Again, I can't thank enough those members that were part of that, and of course the team that I work with is amazing. Tim Sheldon, I know, was also with us in that room, so I appreciate that as well. So it's been great. All right, thank you very much. Then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. The last item under my report is just really a reflection on the opening days of school. And quite honestly, when we were putting the agenda together, I didn't think the narrative would look the way it did, because just certainly didn't plan on having 115-degree school days. So I'm going to introduce our communications manager for the district, Brooke Hagstrom. As she's coming up, I would just like to say thank you to our entire community and to the board for the support these last 2 days in terms of changing the calendar to reflect half days of school so we could get our students home earlier before it got so ungodly hot. And I think if you looked at the news last night and again this morning, there are a number of schools around us who ended up having to close because either the HVAC failed or one district, a number of bus drivers called in sick because they got too hot on their buses and couldn't drive. And I think the fact that we took these precautions, although I know from hearing from the community, I would have loved to have been able to tell people with more notice, right? But you never want to close school unless you have to, and I didn't feel we had to until we started getting those reports from the National Weather Service on Tuesday morning. So the other piece of that, the domino effect of that, was understanding that our community really depended on some of our child care partners so that they could go to work. And I'm very conscious of the fact that if we close school for a day, for whatever the reason, we're impacting an entire family, because typically parents don't get snow days. They typically have to go to work, and then how do you find child care? And to that end, I really want to thank all of my administrative colleagues, every administrator in this district, from assistant principals to directors to district level administration. Each one of us took, and some of us took multiple shifts, but we worked with Champions in the Gurnee Park District. I'm so grateful to the leaders of both Champions and the Gurnee Park District. So Katie, thank you, and Katie Ross at Champions and Sabrina Hinkins at the Park District were so willing to work with us and say, what can we do to help? What do you need? And what they were willing to take our students earlier in the day, and they're trying to have staffing plans too, so they were not prepared with less than 24 hours notice to bring in 15 more employees at 11 o'clock the next day. But what we did have was a very eager and willing group of administrators, some of whom were voluntold, but everybody spent time either at primary or intermediate or elementary working with the Champions program and the Gurney Park District program, and then our amazing transportation team was able to take the kids who were supposed to go to the Park District in the afternoon from the Champions program to the Park District so that they could then finish out their day and the parents could stay at work. And so, it was kind of an interesting exercise because it took a lot of us out of our comfort zones. And just the things that I saw happening today, I know Martha was working with a kid on a word search, and Derek Williamson was making a plastic cup, like a yarn phone with two kids at elementary. And Vicki Kiefer and I were taking the tops off of ketchup things at lunch for kids, and it was fun. I don't want to have to do it again, but it was for the short term. It was actually really interesting to be able to do that, and you trying to make. Sometimes it's not. There's not one good decision, but it's what's the least horrible of all your options. And I really think that the community as a whole, from our parents to our students, to our teachers and staff and administrative colleagues, everybody made the best of this situation, and I'm really proud of the fact that we prioritize the safety of our community, and people were willing to be inconvenienced to make that happen. So that's certainly part of the story of the start of this year, but a much more entertaining look at it is coming your way thanks to Brooke Extra.
Okay, so the video really does speak for itself, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to introduce it. The month of August is extremely busy in Woodland District 50, and it's more than just a list of events on our events calendar or just kind of talking about all the different things we did, new teacher orientation, welcoming back staff, popsicles with principals. We talk about these events, but really I hope this video shows you the people that are involved and that come to these events, and the joy that you see on their faces when we're kind of all back together for the start of school. So enjoy.
This did not happen likely. Oh, no.
Yeah, so take that.
Oh, yeah, the Wi-Fi's off.
Can you just reload the page?
That concludes my report.
Thank you. And is it okay if I read this email that we got?
Sure.
Got that? Okay. So I received a message from a bus driver who was very appreciative of everything that was done to help keep them comfortable because they were really in it these last couple days. And he said, all the members of administration, both in the school buildings, district office, and all the ladies in the transportation building did a fantastic job helping all of us bus drivers keep cool, providing ice-cold bottles of water and cooling rags, and giving us opportunities when we didn't have students on our buses to step off our buses and either go inside the schools or sit on the buses with the AC to stay cool. They all deserve recognition for it, so thanks for everything you did for them.
Great note, yeah. They deserve it, yeah.
Thank you, bus drivers. All right, thank you. So we'll move on to citizen statements. I don't think we have any, right? Okay, no citizen statements at this time. Next is our consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Second?
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary?
Yes.
Carla?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
And motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Our first action item is the approval of board agreements. Can I get a motion to adopt the revised board agreements from the June 17th, 2023 starting right, creating the new governance team, board self-evaluation special meeting, and then we also, well, we didn't make any changes last month. We reviewed these last month, and can we get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I don't think we should be voting on these without having the full board discuss them. And that hasn't ever happened.
We have, these have been in our packets for a couple of months now, and I haven't had any requests. There's time right now to discuss them, if we, that's what this time is for.
Should have come as a discussion item, and then for those board members that weren't able to make the meeting versus, springing that on them this way. I think my objections too with those board agreements, I don't think this board has developed as a team enough to have agreement at this point. I think there's still a lot of distrust and animosity with this group. So I will be voting no.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Carla?
I
Carla?
would say no, and I will qualify that. I will say no, and I'll qualify that by saying if the way these board agreements were brought to the board even shows the lack of transparency and team building that is lacking with this board. So I would definitely say no to any agreement at this point.
Renee?
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to note that I will not be following these agreements. Just to be clear. It takes 7-0 for the board to follow agreement. So I think just want to go for the record that I won't be following these agreements.
And I would like to go on the record that not supporting a board decision and blatantly stating that you're not going to follow them says something about this board as well.
Exactly, that's what I've been trying to tell you. Because there's no team building with this board, and this wasn't discussed before bringing it to the board. So no.
But this is not the time for discussion. That was before the vote, so we're going to move on
Yep,
to item
I'm
B,
definitely
which is
saying
approval
I
of the Board of Education meeting minutes from June 22nd, 2023.
Exhibit by not even having other board members have their say.
So last month, we agreed to postpone the approval of the June 26th.
It's very rude, but it speaks to my problem.
So So last month, we postponed the approval of the June 26th.
You're demonstrating exactly what I'm trying to say.
Goodness.
Carla, do you have
The
anything?
bullying has to stop. Yes, the bullying has to stop, and this is exactly what I was trying to say.
But right now,
The fact that, Corey, you continue to allow it to happen, but tell me in private conversation, is another problem. So again, I can't hold these agreements when we're not a team.
okay, but
And you allow the bullying and the racism to continue, but tell me sidebar that it's wrong.
Carla, your oath of office says that you will support majority decisions of the board, so I'm not sure why.
Not when it comes to board agreements, and I won't.
When
have
it
that
comes to
discussion
anything.
Now, no, I won't have that discussion now.
Can we please be respectful of everyone in this room and continue our board meeting?
Okay, there is consensus in the room, Carla, that we need to move on to the next item.
Board agreement is a 7-0. I will not support it.
Okay, can we
Understood.
move on now?
We're moving on. So the board has agreed to, last month, to postpone approving our minutes from the June 6th governing meeting due to a question regarding some of the verbiage used about a statement that was read at the beginning of the meeting by Brianna. We need to come to a consensus on the verbiage to use, and then a motion can be made to approve the minutes. Does anybody have any suggested verbiage?
And I will say that I was under the belief that I was reading a statement on behalf of Corey.
yeah,
I know from the video that that wasn't explicitly stated, so there was at least one member of the board who thought it was a statement from the board.
yeah, and I can clarify. I watched the video and read like the minutes and everything, and it was. I thought you did a good job of just saying it was you're reading on my behalf because I wasn't there. That's how I interpret it. That's how I asked it to be read, and that's what I saw the video as well. That you're reading on behalf of me.
I too watched the video with closed caption, and you stated that it was on behalf of Corey in his absence.
Yeah.
I did not watch the video. I was here. But guys, we are like at a place where something's got to give because we're wasting too much time, too much energy, and it's just angry. Something got to give because I can't be like I can't function in this toxicity. So either we got to fix it or I'm gonna have to go because it's just too much, and we can't get the work of the board done. And so I don't want to come here and spend 4 hours a month here, and then we have extra meetings, and it's this every single time. No. Whatever's happening is done. It's not going to go back and fix it. Y'all don't like each other, so it don't like each other. We'll work together. Let's move forward.
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate that. I think the change that we discussed last time making in the minutes was to say that the statement was read on behalf of Corey Homer. I don't think there's any disagreement about that among a majority of the board. So can I have a motion that the minutes be approved for the June 22nd, 2023 meeting with the change to say that the statement read at the beginning of the meeting was read on behalf of Corey Homer, Vice President?
So,
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just want to clarify to make sure that I get it correct in the minutes. So where I have in here, public statement made by Brianna Pauvins, it's not going to say on behalf of the Board of Education. It will say on behalf of member Corey Homer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then underneath that, it
was.
was.
Didn't explicitly state that when she read the statement.
Carla, we watched the video. We pulled the transcripts, and it clearly said Brianna's I'm reading this on behalf of Corey Homer.
Or I said Corey had a statement he wanted to make. He couldn't be here. Brianna's going to read it. So that was,
You said that, but that's not what Brianna said.
she just read the statement.
She wasn't explicit.
We can replay the video. It's on YouTube. We've looked at it. I'm just trying to be clear.
Okay, so
Again,
then,
shows a lack of transparency on this board.
Okay.
It's fine.
so then the sentence underneath that will read, Board Member Brianna Palvins read a public statement on behalf of Member Corey Homer regarding actions by another member during the May 25th, 2023 governing meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay,
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did. Brianna and Corey.
Sorry about that.
That's
Okay. So Renee,
I'm not voting on this.
you abstain?
Yep.
Okay. Brianna,
Yes?
Amy,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Carla.
No.
Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you. We'll move on to our reports and discussion items. The first item is the written report and a presentation on the FY24 budget development. We have Mr. Bobek.
Good evening, Board of Education. Thank you for having me. This is our August presentation. It's like step 3 or 4 in our quest to get to the budget hearing on September 28th. That's what I need. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Change slide. No, okay. This one's going to be very. There's a lot of numbers. It's kind of really simple. We're just going to go over what the change was from the June budget presentation all the way up through August. So you can see the numbers and you can see some good news. When you take a look at the slide, I've got revenues and expenditures. On the revenue side, if you can see this little arrow here, an increase of $531,000, which is nice. What happened mainly with the revenue side is that the county every once in a while decides that it's going to shift the percentage of what it's going to pay you. It makes it wreaks a little bit of havoc on people that write budgets, but you know, when they go from 45% to 55%, because the way our budget is set up and because the way we receive the funds, where you get half of it one year and half of the other year, they bumped it up. So we're going to get a little bit of an increase, which is nice. Capital projects is a little bit misleading, down $1 million because some of that went into the educational fund, into the IMRF fund as well. But there's a $531,000 increase. The bad news behind that is and I shouldn't say bad news because the money is being used for education, which is fantastic. We did have an increase in expenditures of $1.7 million. So the difference between our revenues and our expenditures from June to August is 1.17. And if we kind of go on to a little bit more detail of what's happening, the adjustment to the levy revenue connection in our local funds. So the local funds actually went $967,000. We adjusted the IMRF fund. And actually we had solar inverter rebates that were supposed to come in. Well, we thought that they were going to come in June. What wound up happening is we now believe they're going to be September, so they were actually in last year's budget. They're going to be in this year's budget this year. State, this is where things take a turn, and this is where the charter school comes back up again, because we did get our evidence-based funding, our first installment. What they do with Prairie Crossing is they give us our quarterly. Looks like there was a shift in enrollment, whereas the number of students that would be within the Woodland boundaries went up by 18 to 20 kids. The old archaic formula that they use for Prairie Crossing basically just states 18 kids. What's our per capita tuition cost? So it's roughly $16,000 to $17,000 and change. Multiply those together, congratulations. $300,000 comes from Woodland and goes to Prairie Crossing. So that's part of the reason. We did actually also go into Tier 3 status. We are not Tier 2 status anymore, from 89% to 93%. And originally I was thinking, okay, so we got about $160,000 to $180,000 for Tier 2 status, and Tier 3 status, you're going to get 1%, whereas Tier 2 status, you were getting 49% of what those funds were. And I figured that the funds were going to come down by quite a bit. They did get halved, so they came down, they're about $89,000 versus the $180,000 that we've received in the past. So not as bad as I was originally thinking. But then you take Prairie Crossing and you add that into the mix, and all of a sudden you've got this big shift. It's nearly $500,000 down. Also, there's a decrease in transportation. So not all of that is Prairie Crossing. There's about $50,000 to $60,000 in the transportation claim fund that was due on August 15th. We turned that in. We got the estimates back. It's down a little bit from the previous year. Federal grants, we just had a change to the ESSER 2 grant. Some of the monies that weren't spent last year that we were thinking were going to be spent last year shifted over to this year. ESSER 2 will be done and complete by September, so all of those grant dollars will be spent. So that's what gets us to our $531,532,000. I add in this slide. I always have the slide on here. You basically see, okay, these are all the funds. This is the fund breakdown. We've got the pie charts. It doesn't significantly impact the pie charts. We're still run like the same school district that we've ran like before. When you go into the expenditure adjustments, so over the summer we've had some positions come to the Board of Education. We've added those into the mix. We still have the refinement of staffing expenditures, and that's going to be one of the biggest things yet to do. We're still looking at enrollments. We're still looking at classes. We're still looking at potentially outsourcing. What I think is actually going to happen between now and September is that actually salaries and benefits are going to come down a little bit because I've got a mixture of outsourced and in-house people, and I've got them covering the same position, so I'm going to have to reduce them from one side. I'm just waiting to see which side that comes from. When you look at professional services, I adjusted the food service. What we think we're going to spend in food service. Our liability insurance came in. We actually had to pay that in July. It came in a little bit higher. There's that contracted staffing that I was talking about. That goes right to salary and benefits as well. Supplies and equipment, this is the change of $962,000. We know about the chiller tower over at Intermediate School. There have been some fuel tank repairs before school started. Not only did Lot A go down, but Lot C went down. And we need to make sure that we run our buses. We need to make sure that we have fuel for our buses. So there were some expenditures that needed to be spent that we had to take care of before the start of school in order to make sure that we have transportation for our kids. One of the things we're talking about that was added is the technology replacements, our infrastructure. I added in quite a few dollars for switchgear. I'll talk about that right now. We have E-rate. What E-rate is it's run federally, right? Not state, federally. It's run federally. It's a program whereas there's a certain dollar amount that's allotted to you, and as of now, we have $900,000, correct, 900, that we can spend, that we'll be reimbursed for. Of our total spend, we are still responsible for 40% of it. E-rate would be responsible for the 60%, so you take the $900,000, you add the $600,000 on our end, that's $1.5 million. $1.5 million worth of tech gear that we have to spend within the next two years. Just double checking. Thank you, Sherry. And coincidentally, we had it was an audit of our technology, and our technology was aging. And some of our technology is going out, and it's going out in the spring, and some of it was going to go out next summer, and maybe even a little bit before that. We already had in the plan to do our wireless access points. We had put that in the plan last time. We've got a lot of switches that need replacement. So I'm sure that the technology department could spend well beyond $900,000, but we're planning to spend about $900,000 this year on the technology department, and then we'll figure out where we're going to go from there and what the future is going to look like. One of the other items that we've added into this budget here, we've got projectors. We've got projectors that are very old. Bulbs are going out. Bulbs are hard to find. We can't have the bulbs going out. The new technology that's coming out are flat panel screens. So we've got kind of a phase-in implementation for flat panel screens over the next several years. We've added in the primary and elementary flat panel screen replacement. That was not in the June budget. If you look at tuition and private placement, there's not a lot there, $4,500. So there's where the $1.7 million comes from. Once again, the pie charts, it doesn't necessarily change much. Salaries and benefits are going to be king. They'll always be king. I added in the capital expenditures. I'll have one of these in the September budget hearing. Anything that's highlighted is where the changes came from. We've got fuel pumps, Down on the lower end, we've got the cooling tower repairs, we've got the switchgear at the bottom. I also have had one for asphalt and paving, and as of right now, as of the June budget, we were talking about just doing the South Campus, finishing up what we did at the start of this year. So we still need some work done at primary and elementary school, but middle school is in a state of disrepair, so monies have been added in for middle school, should we choose to go that route. When we get to the budget hearing, this whole list of projects, not everyone needs to be bid, even though some of them are over the bid threshold, some of them are under the bid threshold, some of them are technology. So what we're going to do, the budget hearings are basically going to say, if you approve the budget, there will be a separate motion that says, you also approve these projects, and you can procure the projects and go out to bid as you see fit during the year. Because sometimes it comes up and it's like, well, we do the report, and we do the action item, and it takes 2.5 months. When you get to what the overall end result is, we always look at the lower left-hand corner. And last time I believe it was at 1.9, we're at 3.3 this time. So we've gone down a little bit. I think it's going to come back. But I always say, remember, when you take a look at how much we're doing in capital projects, which is going to be about $8.5 million, we are in a good place. We are definitely in a good place. We did borrow that money so we could do the capital projects, and that's what we're doing. With that concludes the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. We'll move on to item B, presentation on district assessments and results. So you have information in your packet from Dr. Thomas. Dr. Misha?
Dr. Thomas is up. Yeah.
All right, I'm back again. All right. This one, I'm going to try to stay within 10 minutes. John over here is going to keep me on task. If I get off task, he's going to just give me a little nudge or something. So I'm presenting here today the 2023 Woodland Student Achievement Report. This is a report I've given annually for a good 17 years or so. So the numbers look a little different every single year, and this year will be a little different as well. I kind of broke it down into 4 different groups of assessments. So we have the kids assessment, which is something that's given to all of our kindergartners at the beginning of the school year, which will be happening probably starting next week or so. I have the IAR data, and of course its alternative is the dynamic learning maps at DLM, which is for students that are differently able. We have MAP, which I think many of us are really familiar with, and we've seen that. It's been part of the district for a good 20 years. The new one that I haven't really reported out in this presentation is Access. Access is the assessment that we give to all of our English learners. It's a required assessment. And I'll go into more detail on that, but those are the 4 core assessments that we give here in the district. So the pattern I'm going to use for each one of those is kind of just give you a brief background of what the assessment is. I'll show you some of the results of what we have. I'll talk about maybe just some initial findings looking at those results. And then I'm going to give you 2 pieces of context, because really the data is meaningless without context. And the context first will be an internal context. What is it? How does this compare to us before? How do Woodland's 2023 performance compare to Woodland's 2022 performance in general? It's often what we'll see. And then we'll have an external context, which I think is extremely important. I think I have seen other districts very much get into their own way of just comparing themselves to themselves and not realize that there are many districts around them that are similar or comparable or nearby districts that are doing phenomenal things and their performance is far exceeding that internal kind of myopic viewpoint. So we want to always have an external context. I think it's such an essential piece. That could also include national norms, which today I'll also be reporting out quite a bit on that. So starting out with the kids assessment. So the kids assessment is a required assessment. We give it in September. Every single kindergartner that's in the state of Illinois in a public school has to take this. There's 14 different indicators, which is great because at one time I remember Stacey and I going, I think it was like 40 or something like that. It was going to be, wow, a big lift, but 14 is great. There's 5 different categories in which the information is broken down, but there's probably 2 or 3 really that we focus more on. So this is the kids' data for 2 years, and on the left-hand side it's going to be September 21, so understand that that's going to be FY22 kids' data. And then on the right-hand side it's going to be FY23, that our recent students just took it in September of just last year. And then when you take a look and see if the pointer's working, it thinks it's working, it's sort of working. If I don't move it fast, it works. Like it works better when I move it. Okay, so in this case, these are the different categories here. This is kind of like students' social emotional kind of readiness to go into school. This is math, this is literacy, and this is an alternative version of literacy. And then at the very end then is a summary. So looking at over here in our most recent scores, you can see this lighter blue bars, those are our students. The darker blue bars are going to be the state averages. So going down, kind of looking through, is this where we're kind of below the state average here, we're below in math, our students are coming in, or we're below in literacy, and obviously then we would anticipate is what we see. What the state says is that based on this, about 17.4% of our kindergartners who started with Woodland last year were ready for kindergarten, versus the state average was basically 30%, 29.9% of kindergartners in the state of Illinois were ready for kindergarten. So I offer this information just for a couple of things, but hold on to that thought. Then I also want to go and compare back to the year before. So in FY22, we saw about 20.1% of our kindergartners coming in ready for kindergarten. So a little bit of a decline, not much that we can do with that, though. I mean, there are certainly, we could do 100% pre-K programming for every single one of our students that are here in the district. That's certainly an option to try to bring these numbers up. But otherwise, we have a lot of Title I programming, as well as our special education services, that we do support kids coming to Woodland at ages 3 and 4. So taking a look then, so internal context, yes, is a little bit lower number. But really, what does that mean? It just really, we've got some differences between the two as far as like one, math was a little bit lower versus the others were a little higher. One positive thing we're going to see, and we'll see a little bit later in the math data, is that our kids did actually grow well, and we did see an increase over the previous year, so that's a positive for sure. So now going to I probably should change different colors, but I don't know. The blue and purple seemed like a good idea at the time. In both years, though, really when we take a look at an external context, both years our kids are coming in lower than the state average, meaning that we have a higher lift to get our kids really up to what the state would consider to be proficient. So that's something that we definitely want to make sure we're noting. We don't really have a national context for this. I believe this is a Illinois unique assessment. There may be other states that have similar assessments, but there's not a way for us to kind of compare that on a national level. So that's kind of our kids' assessment. Is there any questions on that before I move on? Because I'll just kind of go on to the next assessment. Okay, if not, hold them. I'll certainly answer anything at the end. IR and DLM. So these are the core assessments. These are, the way to really say this is that this is the state's choice of how to comply with the federal mandate for annual assessment in English language arts and math. The state chooses the assessment by which we use, but the federal Department of Education requires that we give this. Otherwise, they would say you don't get any Title I funding, which is the big carrot that the federal government uses. Illinois has a uniquely high expectation for students on the IAR. I've given you some information there. There's a linking study. I can certainly share that with you as well. But generally speaking, students need to be in the 67th to 71st in English language arts to be defined as at grade level or proficient for the state of Illinois, and 62nd to 75th in math to be proficient or at state expectations. This is unique to Illinois, and I'll show you in a moment. There are other states that go lower, that say level 3 is passing or is proficient. Illinois has not. We've had very high expectations, and we've kept that since really, I think, State Superintendent Smith. Here's an example of, so when I talked about that, if I were to go right now and look at each state's proficiency, I might look at, for instance, over on the left, I might look at Ohio's. What percentage of students in Ohio are proficient on their state assessment? I'm probably going to see a really high percentage compared to Illinois. But in Illinois, since we're so far on the right, the expectation is so high. Those are the other states in the United States. We're nearly, basically, at the top. This is for 4th grade math. Each is a little different, but we're in like the top 5 to top 7 of every single category. So we're going to see lower proficiency levels because the expectation is so high. So if you're a parent who's coming to the United States and looking by state where to go, you might be fooled into thinking, oh my gosh, Illinois doesn't really have very good expectations, or they don't really have a good education system. And that would be completely false. We have a very good education system in the state of Illinois. We have extremely high expectations. So if you look at our data, it may look like our students aren't doing as well, but we have really high expectations for our kids. So that's what the purpose of this is. So as a result, when we look at our data, our actual percentages of kids that are proficient, 30% is roughly where we're talking. Just to help you kind of read this chart, I'm going to go through the top rows are going to be English language arts. The bottom rows are going to be mathematics. Each of those are by grade level. Let's take a look first at this light green chart. The pointer doesn't work for me right now. The light green column right there is going to be our performance, so the percentage of students that were proficient in 2022 on the IAR. And the column to the right, the little darker green, is the percentage of students that were proficient in 2023. And in cases where you see some of the bolds, that would be times where we had higher performance than we had the year before. And in many cases, I'll talk about a little bit of summary in a minute, but you see maybe some darker bolding really at the lower grade, at the lower numbers, the lower parts of the graph, which is really our higher grade levels, which if you recall, we talked about some of the concerns about the performance in our middle school, but there's actually been some really good improvements at the middle school in that. We'll take a look at the 2022. That's all I have to give you as a context. The 2023 Illinois averages are not available yet. They won't be available even behind the scenes probably for a few more weeks. So that blue column is really just a delta off of that. So it's just to give you some context of where we are in comparison to state average. Let's move on. So overall, there's a slightly higher percentage of Woodland students who are defined as proficient and excellent. If I take the grand mean, meaning the mean of means, if I take all those means and I average them up, a slightly higher percentage of our students are proficient. But it's really nothing to quite celebrate on that. It's higher in ELA. We had a small slide in the math side. Some notable things, and I'll talk about those when we get to findings, is if you take a look here, third grade is kind of a concern. We see some big drop-offs if you take a look at those numbers. So greater than 5% decreases. If I look at the middle school then, you can take a look at those again. We see some increases, some big, hefty increases, especially 8th grade specifically on the ELA side, going from 23% up to 35%. So external context, I can't really give you one yet. That data is really being withheld by the state. Sometimes I've done this presentation a little bit later in the year when we have that information to give more of a context, but I just can't give it to you right now. And then just a reminder, again, our expectations are really high. So don't be fooled by lower percentages. Our expectation here in Illinois are pretty high. To give you an example, when I was teaching, that bottom line there, in 1990s, late 1990s, the ISAT expectation for 4th grade was 13th percentile. So yeah, we had 80 to 90% of our kids always proficient. But were we really kind of fooling ourselves? Were our kids really truly getting a great education, or were we just celebrating the big numbers? So I do applaud Illinois for having high expectations. MAP assessment. So again, we're most familiar is kindergarten through 8th grade. We do this twice a year. We do it a third time sometimes in the winter, but generally everyone does it twice. It's been very reliable for us. It's been an assessment that we've used that we've been able to kind of trust what we think the numbers are going to be. The IAR and PARC have for years annually kind of changed and adjusted, so it's been hard to treat them as being really reliable. So I'm going to share a couple things. Do know that the information I'm going to show you is based on the norming study, which was 2020, which would be all pre-pandemic information. So understand that we're comparing against a data point that's a little bit, really not maybe correct for the current situation we're in. A little hard to see, so adjust your glasses like I just did. But same kind of thing. Reading is all in green in the top right or the top columns. Math is in blue in the bottom rows. That first column on the left is going to be our spring mean RIT for 2022, meaning that's the average score for our students in kindergarten for reading. So, and then the column to the right of that is going to be for 2023. Anytime I bolded it means we saw some improvements. So, generally speaking, we saw a lot of different grade levels and where we saw the score was higher. The mean average was higher. Again, kind of pointing out, we'll kind of look at that. We see a couple of soft points that we did see in the IRA data as well. Third grade kind of specifically, kind of a big drop, even on the reading side as well. Math was a little bit better, though. And middle school, RIT's not so much impacted, but we'll show you in growth that was a little bit better. Then I have, the gray column is going to be NWA 2020 norms, and then to the right is just a delta of that. Okay, how about growth? The only thing I do a little bit differently here is growth is if you want to look to the right, that was last year. The right two columns are last year's data, and the columns on the left are this year's. I just wanted to put them up right next to where the column and the headings are. And we can see some bolds. You see some bolds, especially on the ELA side. But these are not scores that we had typically seen. The last 2 years, these are more of scores I've presented to you in that mid-50s-ish is kind of a typical percent of our students that are meeting their growth target. A lot of averages, but we do see some things in math that we need to look into further. And I have some descriptions on that. We see like even here as being below in 5th grade, so less than 40% of our students meeting their growth target. That's really kind of off from what we typically have. I don't know if it's a one-year misnomer or what that is. 2nd grade math also being lower. And if you take a look, 2nd grade is actually one of the areas that I'm kind of most concerned about, because historically 2nd grade and 7th grade have been the 2 grade levels where we've had considerably well over 60% of our kids meeting their growth targets. Mm-hmm. So we have not seen that quite. 7th grade is still pretty solid, but 2nd grade is definitely a dip from where we've seen before. So again, a slightly higher percentage of students reach their math targets in math and reading. Again, like maybe close to 1% more. Nothing again to really recognize and note, but we had pretty much everyone's classified as average, though we did have some belows. We had some belows last year as well, and we've had those some in the past, but typically we're able to make some adjustments on those and quickly see some changes. I've summarized some notable differences down at the bottom. Just again, between between Woodland in 23 and Woodland in 22, what did we see? 5th and 7th grade, grading pretty normally on the reading side. 4th grade math had some lower scores, and something we're going to talk about in a minute. I talked to you again already about the 2nd grade piece as being kind of a concern. So what about an external context? That was an internal. Well, I was, so as I prepare this, I think about things pretty much throughout the summer. I'm trying to figure out, how do I present a message? Because every presentation is a story, right? What's the story? What's the message? And I was really surprised to come across this. This is, NWA just released a study. This was in July of 23. And I've shared their findings for one of their first section, their main section. But I want to read to you something that was actually jaw-dropping to me. And that is that overall achievements in Gains 23 lagged pre-pandemic trends, that we've generally seen. Some very large declines. However, this trend is worse than what was observed in the 2021-2022 year, where in general achievement gains were consistent or even surpassed pandemic trends. Meaning that 2023 for MAPS data is actually lower than it was in 2022 as far as growth data. That's really jaw-dropping. I really can't say that I ever foresaw coming out of the pandemic that we would see that kind of thing where we saw a drop even a year after. So that's really shocking. And a little bit of what some of the data we saw, but certainly not to the degree that they're seeing. So I'm not quite sure what to say about that, but that's certainly really kind of, it's unsettling, really. This is what they found as far as percentages off growth as far as what they used to historically have. We did not see as big of drops in reading on the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade side, and you're seeing almost 20% fewer students reaching their growth targets. That's pretty substantial. On the math side, we saw a little bit more of that. But again, just really some interesting information from the research arm of NWA, and something we certainly need to keep in context. Okay, let's move on to access. So access, again, is a required assessment for all of our Ls. It's a federal mandate to give this. It's Illinois' choice, the type of test we give, but a lot of states choose to use access. I think it's a reasonable test. One little note is that even if you're a parent that refuses L services, you actually have to we have to still give you the access test. Those conversations are not always fun to have with parents when they understand they still have to take access. The state of Illinois establishes exit criteria. We have really no control over that. They set exactly when a student is an L and when they are no longer an L. Rigor for access has increased over the past few years, and really it is a great way for us to track information as well as when students do exit. There's also a metric that we track that. I don't know what happened to me. I guess I went easy on this chart, really easy to follow. There's not complexity. I don't know what I was thinking that time. I just, made it easy. I don't know. So anyway, pretty easy numbers, 2021, 2022, 2023. The green is obviously the most recent year. But as you see, our numbers of L's continue to climb in this district, even though our enrollment continues to slide. I think we're now at maybe up 4,600 kids. We're at about 1239 as far as students that were L's last year. About 27% of the students right now in Woodland are L English learners, so quite a large percentage. But even though we had some increases in that, we still saw we increased our number of percentages of kids that were reaching English proficiency, and we saw some increases certainly in the percentage of kids over the last 3 years. So that's, I think, a testament really to, I think, our dual language program, which certainly needs to be recognized, and certainly Elizabeth Sanchez-Spezzi's leadership with that, as well as the board that has done a lot to really cultivate a really transformational change in this district. Remember about how many years ago? We were actually just 100% monolingual. We had kids that were segregated out into small classrooms all by themselves, learning English and then putting them into gen ed and hope that they do it right. And then this district has really transformed itself to this. So we certainly ought to recognize those positives for sure. In external context, once again, I think we do see that affirmation. We see it in a few different places. In 2022 of March, I think we shared out that we received a letter from the multilingual department of the Illinois State Board of Education regarding how well our district had done in significantly increasing the number of L's reaching proficiency and reducing our achievement gaps. That included a monetary reward. I think if I remember right, what did we say, like top 10% or something like that? Was there some percentage we thought? So that's a really great recognition to our district, and certainly, again, goes back to the dual language work that we're doing. And even in our upcoming Illinois report card, which is this is a tease, you can't see it yet, but you will see it in a couple of months. Our achievement gap really for our L's is even decreased even more to the highest category, which is minimal gaps, which is basically like the highest you could be. So really, again, a great testament that the work of all of our teachers within dual and all of our teachers are really doing to help support our kids. But I don't have any other context for any other districts yet. That information is just not released yet. All right, so here's the summary. What are we going to do about it? So, I think we need to do kind of a hard look at our math curriculum that we just adopted. Any implementation, you can have an implementation dip, you can have a J dip, whatever you want to call it. I think we need to investigate, though. Those resources that we did just adopt in K through 5 in math, are they really delivering what we think they should be? Or do we need to re-examine and do some adjustments? So we need to look at alignment to standards as well as rigor. We do get some more detailed reports from IR. We'll be looking at those specifically. We should re-review our internal common assessments, which we should do annually anyway, to ensure that we have appropriate rigor and alignment. We will be adding in the 4 core subject areas for middle school, so we'll make sure that those are in place and we have aligned those to the specific IR expectations. Couple things. Today with the consent agenda, you approved the English language arts 6th through 8th grade. I really appreciate that. We certainly appreciate that. But we need to be very cognizant of, again, not experiencing an implementation dip by implementing a brand new resource like that. And a year from now, we will have to, because the old resource we've been using in math in middle school, it will no longer be supported, so we will have to be making a change in the middle school core math programs next year. And the last item is, last year we made some adjustments as to how we use our math and our reading specialists at the elementary school. And I think we're going to need to reevaluate that. We had adjusted to more of a coaching model. I think we either need to examine how that was being implemented or how we think it should be implemented and how we think we're getting performance and results out of that. Or look at adjusting them back to the kind of work that they did before. But that's something I think my department really just needs to investigate far more, along with Mr. Reardon, just to see, really, are we using our specialists the best way that they can in those grade levels? So that's it. I don't know, John, how was that in time? Like 2 hours? Okay, all right. Okay. I try to stay on topic. All right, anyway, that's it. Does anyone have any references, as always. Any questions? Oh, okay. How long?
I'll have a question.
For me, that's okay.
Maybe not necessarily a question. What?
Dr. Little has a question.
Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, I did not receive a copy of the report, can that be sent, the presentation, can that be sent to me?
For sure,
please?
for sure, for sure.
Thank you. Then I may have questions after that.
Of course, absolutely.
Thank you. I have a question about the math and reading specialists at elementary. Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit more about that change that was made?
Yeah, so traditionally, Woodland has used specialists as kind of a very difficult role of having kind of like 3 different core jobs. One of those jobs is to provide intervention support for students. One of those jobs is to be like a coach, a pedagogical support, and one of those is really to help reform and adjust curriculum. So with the previous principal, we made some adjustments to have really kind of 2 at each content area, just focus on pedagogy, just be coaches. And in most cases, that is best practice in many districts. That most districts don't really have specialists doing as much of that intervention work. They have just interventionists, and then they have coaches. But we made some quasi changes, and like I said, is it on us for the implementation? We'll have to re-examine. Is there something we need to make sure that we're doing in the expectations with that? Is it something that we've then adjusted the number of interventionists and that we have less interventionists working with students? Maybe we need to re-examine. Maybe those roles need to go back into help supporting students. But I think we need to just investigate more and really see what's going on in context of this data that we have. Because it's clear in 2nd and 3rd grade we did not see the results that we would want to see. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the kind of honest look at the end at like what needs to be done, and it seems like we have some paths forward. So
Yeah, for sure. Anything else?
So you mentioned the lower grades that you were like, those are your concerns, whatever word you want to use. Like, so what does it look like? What do you, I mean, like, do we show the data to the teachers? Do we have conversations with the teachers, kind of thing?
Yeah. So the next piece is that we have a specialist meeting on Monday. We have a lot of things to cover, but one of those that generally will cover the performance that we had here. This presentation will be part of that. We'll discuss through it as a team. The specialists are really, for us in the T&L department, really the group that we rely on most is content experts, as really the expert leadership of those content areas. So we really do look to them as to what they think is going on with the data. They may have a different read on it. I don't know, it's possible, but we'll look to them and really see, brainstorm from there. The other thing we'll be able to do is really look into more in depth in the IR reports, because those are broken out by standards. If I were to show you a progression of the IR, have you seen the IR reports? Ever seen them? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like dots on this huge chart. And what it is that your district is not assigned every question on the IR. You get certain standards you're assigned to. There are far more complex standards on one side of this chart and easier ones on the other. And so each district gets a little bit of a different kind of set of questions. So you don't really know until after you get the data, you see how your kids did on certain standards that were selected for you. So once we have that information, we can go then back and examine, do our internal assessments, are they measuring these specific standards that came up? If so, are we getting false information? Do we think our kids know them, but then when we get to the assessment is more rigorous or more complicated in the questioning, so our kids don't do as well? So we need to just kind of analyze that in more depth and really see what's going on as far as the expectations for standards and what our kids are really seeing when they get to the assessment. And then math, 2nd grade, I think we're going to be just looking at, I think we need to look on the math side and take a look really and examine with our new product. Is that something that's contributing to that? Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of information. I appreciate you sharing it and like summarizing it for us. I really appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right.
thank you. Item C is information on revised board policies. The policy committee met on August 10th and discussed 4 policies to be updated. Is there any discussion regarding any of those changes, which we'll vote on next month? Okay. All right, we'll move on to item D, receive.
Yeah, I have a couple.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Maybe explain to that.
I'm sorry?
I'm scrolling to those. And there's policy 2:220. I think the word in under agenda, I believe it's paragraph 2, it talks about do not require extensive discussion when referring to the consent agenda. And my question is, why add extensive here when under items under consent agenda are not typically deliberated upon? And if so, we move those out of consent agenda into the action item if deliberation is needed. So I think the word extensive should be taken out or removed.
Was that one of your changes?
I don't remember.
I mean, I think there probably could be some discussion in the discussion before the vote if it were just a quick clarification. I think the idea was that if something needs a lot of discussion, that it should be pulled out for an action item. So we always have the
Right.
option to
If any
discuss.
discussion on the item would come out of consent. If it's on a particular item, you pull it out of consent agenda to discuss.
But it doesn't need to be that way.
You don't discuss under consent.
There is a discussion period before the vote on the consent agenda. And that's my
It's usually not
recollection
for a
of the
particular
discussion.
item.
I'm sorry?
Right. Then my other one is why under the, I think it's the second paragraph under agenda, it says something about within 4 months of the request of a board member, an item will be put on the consent agenda. Why was that added?
Not consent agenda, just the regular agenda.
Yes, you're right.
And we added that because
Why is that?
just to prevent, there is actually, this board policy that we have existing that says that if any board member asks for something to be added to an agenda, that it should be adding to an upcoming agenda. But it wasn't very specific, and so the idea was to kind of keep from like kicking the can down the road and not ever getting to the discussion, that we put a time limit on it. Even if it's just a discussion at a board meeting, it doesn't mean it has to come to a vote, but we need to have a discussion to find out if there's consensus about moving forward on it.
That actually can be done under board operations versus the way it's stated, because my concern is that if it's an item that may not be favorable to other board members, it may, somebody may try to delay it over 4 months to bring it, versus if something needs to come to the board sooner, which is, should be in protocol, policies and procedures, the board member can ask by vote to get it on the agenda in board operations. So I don't know that this needs to be added either. I'm just concerned that things will be delayed because of this 4 months versus speeding up the process.
Okay. Are there any other,
Then I think my
did you have another question?
other, yeah, still on the same colon, 220. I apologize, my computer is kind of acting up. I don't know if I can get to my comments. I'll let somebody else go while I get my comment.
I don't think there's anybody else have any questions or.
Okay, my other concern is under, it's still under agenda. It looks like it's the third paragraph, but it's on page 2. It says the board will take final action only on items contained on the posted agenda. Items not on the agenda may still be discussed. I think that should be discouraged, so not in policy. By Open Meetings Act, that's allowed, but we want to ensure that items only on the agenda are discussed. We don't want board members holding back agenda items, not putting them on the published agenda for discussion. I just don't want to lose the spirit of the Open Meetings Act by suggesting that we can discuss things that are not on the agenda. That should be an exception to what we do, not in policy.
This particular sentence was, I think, written in with our attorneys, right?
You're correct to clarify the meaning of that statement, yes.
Yeah, there was some really unclear wording in the language that came from ISB via press. And so we did check in with the attorney, and this was their, recommended language for us. And I think we're not saying that they should be discussed or, just the wording says may still be discussed. And I think that gives us some flexibility in case something comes up that's timely that does need to be discussed, that we, aren't kind of prohibiting ourselves from doing that if we need to. I mean, I don't think it's a regular practice of this board. It hasn't been.
That is, when you put it in policy like that, it becomes a regular practice, and I think it should be discouraged. But also, I think if the attorney was called in to discuss this, the full board should have been privy to that discussion, because there's a lack of transparency on the full board with what the attorney is saying and what you guys interpreted the attorney to say. So I think, again, I have a problem with that statement, because I think it's a slippery slope in having board members discuss items that are not fully published on the agenda, and therefore our public is not aware, and it lacks transparency in the work that we're doing on behalf of the community.
Okay. We've noted that. Any other questions, comments? All right.
I think those are all that I have.
So we'll move on to item D, receipt of Freedom of Information Act requests. There were 3 FOIA requests in June, and the log sheets and letters are attached for your reference. I don't think we do need to actually read them. We double checked, and I mean, if you want to, you're welcome to.
I double checked too, and we were told we had to read like a summary of them.
Oh, a summary.
Yeah.
I think Chris likes doing that.
No,
Go for it.
I appreciate it. I don't, not, okay. Here we go. FOIA 1 Heather Rand, representing Heather Rand, received on 7/25. We responded on the 8th. I'm sorry, it was due on the 8th, and we filled the request on the 4th. All correspondence, including email, meeting notes, videos, text messages, voicemails related to online workshops hosted by the Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center between June 12th and 23rd. Also, she was looking for information related to the Courageous Conversations training series related to the partial invoice paid on June 22nd, 2023. It included registered attendance costs and training materials. We have one from Sherry Reed of Smart Procure, received on the 14th. We filled it on the 15th. Basically, it's commercial FOIA for the requests for all purchasing records from 4/24/23 to the current date of 8/14/2023. And number 3 was from Kathy Smizer of NBC Chicago and Telemundo Chicago. Received on the 26th of July, responded to and filled on the 1st of August. Looking for communications in the form of emails, letters, texts, or board proceedings, which include a request to reconsider, ban, and or challenge any book or any other material in any of our school districts' libraries or classrooms. There was a series of things that she wanted, if there were any of these meeting notes, but there were not, so we filled this one as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any questions? All right. We'll move on to board improvement and operations. Item A, announcements and committee reports. Number 1 is the Ed Red Legislative Breakfast. Who attended? Amy?
I attended. I was there with representatives from Gurnee School District 56, District 117, which is Lake and Antioch, and we were at the table with State Rep Joyce Mason. Our table discussions were guided by a series of questions centered around topics such as staffing shortages, state mandates, social emotional learning, new arrival students, school finance, and school safety. I didn't know how detailed I should get.
Anything you want to share, go for it. That's good. All right, any other committee reports?
What's really?
Finance, facilities, and sustainability met. We've been looking for information from Siemens. Siemens had been working on buses and batteries and solar.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Carla? Yes. Hello?
Yes, sorry, this is Samuel.
Hey, Carla.
Oh, hi. Did we lose you for a second? Sorry about that.
No, no problem.
All right. Go ahead, Chris.
Informative report, to say the least. Some interesting things that they're doing in the energy sector in terms of being green and in terms of potentially having some energy savings. Obviously, with energy savings first, there's capital outlay to come. Buses seem to be something that's going to be a little bit further down the road. 1, based off of availability of buses, 2, based off of our structure, and how many miles our buses travel, and not being able to charge them in between routes. Potential for smaller buses. That would probably be the first thing to come. Batteries, there's a market play that they're talking about. That's very complicated. I don't wish to try right now. So, overall, it's kind of a good first step. We'll probably get more in the weeds a little bit later and get some additional information.
It was a really good presentation. It is interesting to see, I do wonder, what it's going to look like in the next 20 years, 10 years, the bus situation. I know Siemens kept saying diesel, but we're, stuff like that, but it'd be interesting to see what they go, more of a hybrid route or electric route, so there's a lot to learn still. It was a really good presentation.
Yeah, Brianna and I were very interested in it at our first III conference and quickly found out that it is a very complex issue.
It is very complex, yeah. But it's exciting.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this was Amy's first time attending as well.
I thought that her feedback regarding our school district as, having done a lot for sustainability was just good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was kind of interesting that, they were pitching electric buses to us because we've already done so many other things. That was kind of cool. They're pitching us the next step when a lot of districts haven't got that far yet.
Cool. And that's Finance Committee, right?
Oh, yeah, finance and sustainability.
Okay. And number 3, Woodland Educational Foundation, was that you, right?
So we had a meeting yesterday, and we're really just continuing to work on transitioning to the new board. We have 4 members for the board now, a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer.
Awesome.
So they're working on getting a Google form on the website ready for when they kind of relaunch on Facebook to find volunteers and what are you interested in and what would you want to do, how could you best help the foundation? What are your interests? Are you good at organizing things? Are you good at networking? Are you, so that we can kind of find a wide variety of volunteers to cover all of the bases. But really the huge focus right now is the transition, getting in good standing with the IRS and the state, getting the signatures at the bank transferred over. There's tentative planning for a meet and greet event to come find out about the foundation. Maybe doing videos to share on the Facebook page of this is how we're different from the PTA. And the next meeting is on the 29th.
Well, no pressure on the social media front, but Tanya has done, TikTok videos with tutus on for the parent mentor program, so the bar is pretty high already. Awesome.
And then I can add for the PTA, their first meeting of the school year is Monday at 7 via Zoom. You can still sign up, and they're also having an event this Saturday at Elementary Playground. I think it's from 10 to 1, either 10 to 1 or 11 to 1.
10.
With the Kona Ice Truck. You can get spirit wear, pay your membership.
Be there or be square. All right. If there are no more committee reports, we'll move on to board improvements, status requests, and future board items. So discussion of superintendent evaluation and timelines. I would like to cop to being probably the last person to turn mine in. No, okay. We're waiting on some of the some data that we didn't get until a few days ago. So mine is almost done. I will have it to you very soon.
No.
Sorry.
Extension for everyone that's involved in that. Everyone listening knows who they are.
You know who you are.
No extension?
No, well, extension. How about next week?
Okay. All right.
I'll send a follow-up email.
Very good. All right.
It's a busy time. It's a busy time. It is a busy. Bob, you okay with us waiting a little longer?
Sure.
You really have a choice.
All right. So at number 2, we took off the agenda, so our new number 2 is courtyard renovations. And initially, we left this on, initially we had talked about some specific changes, but then we left this on because the courtyards kind of do need some to be addressed in some way. So.
Yeah, so this is just, I just thought I'd mention it because it came up a lot during my orientation meetings and that, so these were just ideas that were brought up, and so I just wanted to throw them out there and share. It's nothing set in stone, it's just because of my background, I'm just here to help in any way I can. So, so basically, at primary we discussed the interior courtyard and how that's used, and right now the Green Apple Day of Service, the volunteers there really kind of help meet the needs of using that area for one-to-one student to parent ratio programs where you're seated at the tables and you can't really use it as a play area, but this space can be used for programs like that where it's a one-to-one pairing and it's seated at the tables. There's problems with wildlife in that area, but anyways. Right. So just if ever the time, if ever the time, I'm happy. So at intermediate though, it's a little more exciting. Principal Sheldon discussed with me his vision for usage of the 2 interior courtyards. We talked about having one courtyard potentially as a teaching and learning garden. We're using native plantings. Of course, we want everything to be maintenance friendly. We only approach things within our capabilities and, budget constraints, but there's always opportunities for grants, Woodland Foundation work, or contractors in the area. We have opportunities. So again, I'm happy to use my network to help make connections for our district. We also talked about maybe an enclosed recess space for one courtyard that could provide a greater sense of security for students who need more defined boundaries to feel safe and might be overwhelmed outdoors. And then over at the middle school, we have 2 interior courtyards. Right now, it looks like there's a lot of ladders and there's contractors in there working on the roof, but that area could use some attention and maybe potentially be an enclosed space where students could use their PBIS like roar points to eat lunch outdoors. And then it was brought to my attention that elementary used to have a harvest garden, so I had information about that. So it just seems like there's a lot of potential, a lot of ideas out there, and so, I don't know, I'm happy to work with anyone if they want to move forward on anything.
Administratively, I just want to thank you for offering your expertise and the different network of support that you would have to bring to our schools. I see those areas much like I see like the cleanliness of the school or fixing broken windows and things like that. I see it's very respectful to our students and staff. It looks a certain kind of way, or it sends a message when those areas are overgrown, and I think it sends a different message when they're well tended. And you look at primaries, it's beautiful, and it truly was a community effort, and even if you can't have whole kids out there, just the aesthetic of it, it's very calming to look out over that. And I do think when we're looking for different spaces for kids to be for different reasons, that's certainly an area in several of our schools that we're not utilizing to its fullest. So thanks for bringing attention to it.
All right. And I think like Amy, had a lot of ideas, and some of the principals, had some ideas too. And I think we wanted to keep it on just to make it known that, there's support on the board, and
Yeah.
it seems like, and I would love to see those spaces used.
I think it just tied in with a lot of the, I just think these areas could.
Sorry, hang just one second, Carla.
Just these areas could provide opportunities, not just for teaching and learning, but also just mental stress and just give kids an experience that maybe you can't get just in the classroom.
All right, Carla, go ahead.
Is this a board committee report?
No.
I'm not familiar with this committee.
No, this is just a discussion that Amy wanted to bring to the board.
Okay. It should have probably gone under discussion then, right? Not board improvements and operations.
Because I think it was there because initially Amy was offering some of her expertise to help with this, if administration was interested.
Yes, sounds like a discussion. Obviously, the board agenda is the board's agenda, so I think that it should have gone under discussion versus board improvements and operations. It doesn't, sound like it's for board improvement, right? It's for district-wide.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about that? Comments?
I just wanted to see what you guys said, email privacy, you missed out.
That's one we took off because we didn't get the documentation out, and that was my fault. I lost it.
I did the same.
Yeah. All right. Number 3 is the Equity Symposium. Dr. Meacham?
So I know, thank you. So I just, as a reminder, I guess you might have missed it in your email. I know Laura Campanella sent out information about the annual Equity Symposium and Advocacy Day in Washington. And I'd never even heard of it until I got to Woodland, but I've had the pleasure of attending with Dr. Little and some other administrators, Dr. Walls and Dr. Thomas. We attended last year along with some of our equity leaders. And each of the times that I've gone, 2 years ago, we got a lot of information about strategic planning and some of the, I know we were gearing up for it, and how other districts were presenting and how they were infusing equity into their strategic plan. It was extremely helpful even to Steve's presentation about the education and academics plan tonight. And then last year when we went, there was a focus on student voice, and whether it was how to develop affinity groups, or how to weave student voice in policy and school procedures, getting kids take on handbook issues like dress code and discipline. So it's just a really valuable conference and really timely sessions. And so if you haven't been familiar with it or wondered what is this, it's a great conference, and if you can make it, certainly we're trying to get a group administratively to attend as well. So I just wanted to put in a plug for it because I know you just got an email about it. So.
I'm interested. I'd like to know more. I will do some research.
Great.
Thank you. The next item is discussion of formation of parent advisory committee. This is a something that Brianna and I.
You skipped 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry. Number 4 is reconfiguration of the Oak Room for Board of Education meetings. Dr. Matrix?
Yes, so I had approached Corey and Anna about this item as we were, some of the new equipment that the board had approved over a year ago was finally coming in and being installed in terms of the sound system. I saw that renovation, for lack of a better word, as an opportunity to make some suggestions in terms of rethinking the layout of the room for as a meeting space for the board. And even tonight, just the idea of every time there's a presentation, anyone sitting in front of the screen has to move. And not that it's, I could use the steps, so that's not it. But in terms of reconfiguring the room, I think if we had the board seated along, for example, that wall, and then you could really get more chairs in here. I know there's been issues, several meetings last spring where people were standing against the wall because there was no more room to put chairs the way it was currently configured. I think the other piece that we're working on with Sherry is to upgrade, even without reconfiguring anything, we're looking to upgrade the video camera. And I think one of the pieces that we could do, and Steve alluded to it in his assessment presentation, is that we could really invest in a camera where you could have do 2 screens, and you could have one camera focused on the speaker or group, and another camera focused on the presentation. And I think not only for board meetings, but we use this room almost every day for some sort of professional development or administrative meeting. And I think for those meetings that are Zoom meetings, it would also be really helpful to be able to see, you could participate in a small group, for example, but then still see what's going on the screen if we had that. And I was trying to make my plug to do this. Anna and Corey suggested bringing it to the board to see if there was any interest in moving forward and maybe bringing some sort of, we could set the room up like that and show pictures of it for the next meeting or whatever, but or if people were vehemently opposed to doing it, then I would just let it go. But
Do you want to put us against the wall? It is cold in here. It's freezing right now. I can't imagine being here in the wintertime next to the window.
Can we get you a little heater to go into your seat?
Then I would sit next to the window.
Okay.
If you get 2 of them, because I'm shivering.
we could also move it this way and have the board facing the window.
Oh. Either one. But then I think we're going to get in the camera anybody who comes in.
There you go.
There is that camera that I use when I teach. It's called the OWL. You know what I'm talking about? And it follows you around and your voice and all of that. And then I can still zoom into my students. So why didn't we get the OWL for?
Yeah, I think that's what's kind of hinting at, like a pan, it would follow, and then I did like the picture idea of showing the presentations. Because right now the camera is at the screen, but you can't see it as clearly. I'd be open to new suggestions. I mean, you wouldn't have to move everything around. You can use a Google drawing if you wanted to mock something up. Or
I know Chris probably don't like the idea of the OWL because it's money, but I think the OWL.
we agreed to some of that stuff already, right? Did we budget a few
But I
things?
don't know if that one was in there.
We haven't budgeted for a new video camera, but I mean, that would certainly be part of a renovation of this space. So, it's an idea.
I'm very interested in it. I think that I have always felt like the space could be better used, and it is, kind of awkward to get up and move around. And also when we have people come up, and it's just not the best space for doing it. So I'm open to ideas. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I like the fact that you could seat more people here.
Absolutely.
Rethought.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll bring you something next month.
Awesome.
Thanks. Thanks for your consideration.
Thanks for taking the initiative. I like it. Item number 5 now, a discussion of formation of parent advisory committee. So we do actually have a board policy 2150 that says that we need to have a parent advisory committee, which has not been functional. So we Brianna and I had asked for Dr. Machek to look into that and give us some information.
Yes, so that policy 2150 actually allows for 2 standing board committees. The one is the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee, and then the second is the Behavioral Interventions Committee. And part of the policy also states that there would be nothing to prohibit a board from combining the work of those 2 committees into the single Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee. And in working with Dr. Walls and talking about what these committees would look like, when would they meet, what would we accomplish, who would be on them, we were looking at a lot of the same goals and some of the same, if not specific people, like we would need this person in this role and this job and this title and it was really they were really mirrors of one another. And so I wanted to see if there might be any interest in allowing us to combine those 2, so we'd still do the work of the policy, but that's it would be as redundant to meet with the same group twice. You could cover both agendas with the same group. So, and certainly for myself, one less meeting every quarter or month or however we decided to put it and try to get everybody together 2 times as opposed to once. It just seemed to make a lot of sense from an efficiency standpoint, and I wanted to bring it to the board to see if you would support that idea.
So
Efficiency,
does this Child Health and Welfare Committee, I've heard that term before, does that exist now?
That's a different one, right? From the 2.
Well, there's some of the it's not called that. I mean, we have parents who sit, and the community will sit on we have a district safety committee, and we invite volunteers. We've certainly talked about having, as part of our strategic plan, having a parent group to come in to look at the handbook. But we don't have one that's called it. The CHALK committee is actually a township, the Child Health and Welfare Committee that we currently participate in is actually run through Warren Township, and we were a participant in that group.
Do you see this committee as being the committee that we would seek input on the handbook from?
As Dr. Wall is the custodian of the handbook, I would defer to her.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Awesome.
I mean, the policy allows both to join, so I don't see.
good for everyone. It sounds like.
And it might be hard to get enough volunteers to do 2 brand new committees at once, so I think it's a good idea.
Great. Thank you. We'll move forward that way.
No efficiency.
Thank you.
I just want to say something before we move on.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I just want to say the big, is a huge thank you to everyone with this week. I know this was the most interesting first week of school we've had in a long time. The intermediate schools, the parents, the community, the teachers, the admin, the transportation, the communication, everything was amazing, above and beyond for the first week of school. I just want to say thank you. I know it was a lot, and I know it was a last minute-ish decision, but it went smooth. We learned a lot. We now have a great half-day plan if we ever need it again. But yeah, I really appreciate all the time and effort that went into it. I know that's not a typical first week, but it went smooth. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you to everyone connected with District 50. I would concur.
I would say the whole district and community, it was a community effort.
Yeah. It
Yes.
seemed, it was very proactive
Yeah.
of our district, I think, and then you just saw like other emails or districts following suit, so I'd say well done.
Want to be ahead of the curve. All right. We'll move on now to status of correspondence. There was no correspondence to the board in the month of August, which hasn't been a while since that's been the case, I think. I'm sorry?
He just jinxed us.
And then, citizen statements, do we have anybody else signed up, Laura? No? All right, I don't think we have a need to return to closed session, right? So could I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Brianna?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Hannah?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Gary? Yes. Carla?
Aye.
Renee? Yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.